I bought the cheapest electric log splitter I could find on Amazon, a Wen Lumberjack 6.5 ton. So I'm going to go ahead and set it up and try it out and see what she can do. This unit does come with a stand, but I'm not going to put that on right now. I'm just going to put the wheels directly on the unit and try it out on the floor. I recorded some information on setup, but I put that near the end so that we could get right into what you probably came to see, which is how well it splits wood. Also near the end, there's some information you're definitely going to want to see if you're thinking about purchasing one of these. Logs this size, I'll probably continue to just split by hand because I think it's going to be faster still. But just for testing purposes, I'm going to start out with the small logs and progressively go larger. That collar there with the thumb screw was to limit the amount the ram returns. That way if you're splitting shorter logs, you don't have to wait for the full travel of that piston if you don't need it. Yeah, there you go. Actually, this is, they say up to about 10.5 inches. This is about 10.5 inches.
There's a foot there.
You think?
Oh yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's an explosion, man.
It's kind of violent, isn't it?
It is. It's awesome.
Okay, this thing probably weighs 80 pounds. It's a little bit bigger than 10.5 inches.
No.
This round appears to have a crack in it through the middle already, but that's not a crack. That's just a shadow from an uneven cut. Here we go, avoiding warranties. Okay, this one might need a little help with the stabilization.
All right, let's rock and roll, man. I'll hold it. Wow!
You really have to hold that when it's going to want to pop out. The first go around, for lack of a better term, worked out pretty well, but I was splitting a lot of irregularly shaped wood. Some of it's got curves in it, and some of them had angled cuts on the ends, and really needed someone to hold some of these in place, otherwise they would just kind of pop out or slide around. And of course that splitter is a two-handed operation, one hand to hold the run button down and the other one to operate the ram. However, it is the next day, I don't have any help, and I'm going to need to convert this over to a one-hand operation. So in order to facilitate one-hand operation, that way I have a free hand to steady a log if need be, I went down to my local Harbor Freight and got a couple things, the quick clamp, $2.99, and then I also got this electric foot switch, which is going to go in between the extension cord and the splitter itself. And of course, don't forget your coupon. Never go to Harbor Freight without your 20% off, right? And according to my sister, that's the same deal with Bed Bath & Beyond your budget. Never go there without your coupon. So even with the foot switch, there's still the issue of the run button on the side, which is a normally open switch. I was thinking about just bypassing it internally, but I figured I'll leave that alone, and then that's why I got the quick clamp. I can just clamp the button down. And obviously you could do just that, bypass the foot switch altogether, and it'll just start when you plug it in and stop when you unplug it, but I wanted to have a little easier control than that. So here's put the clamp on here, that'll hold the button down, then I got the foot switch down on the ground. This foot switch was moving around a lot on the snow. It was sliding all over. Plus, it kind of wanted to turn whichever direction because the cord was so stiff, especially with it being cold. So I just mounted it to the piece of 5/4 decking board. It's got mounting ears on it, so that definitely helped out to keep it more stable. For these larger rounds, I'm not trying to split these in half to start and then half again and half again. I'm just kind of going around the outside and taking small chunks and keep turning the round just like you would if you were splitting it by hand with a maul, right? And the splitter did a really good job. Obviously, doing it this way, you definitely need to have an extra hand to hold the log. Therefore, the foot switch worked out pretty well for this. There were a few logs that wouldn't split though, and surprisingly they were the smaller ones, not some of the larger rounds I was doing. Like this one here, for example, it just stopped and got stuck on the wedge pretty good actually. Maybe these logs were some denser wood, or maybe they're really wet and completely frozen, I'm not sure, but it did go through some stuff I didn't think it would. I had some logs that were pretty gnarly and crotches and stuff, and went through those and actually surprised me. Now, per the instructions for installing the stand, this is a two-person job because this thing's pretty heavy, but the instructions say that you have to convince a friend, like bribe them apparently, since no one's going to want to help you out do this, or convince a trustworthy foe, apparently, is what the instructions state. I don't have either with me at this time, but it doesn't matter. I'm not going to install the stand right now. I'm just going to use it on the floor just to test it out. Now, another pre-operation procedure here listed is checking the hydraulic fluid level, and I did something I don't normally do, which is read through the entire procedure before I start working on it. That's if I read it at all, actually. But what's down at the bottom here is it says, remember to use, and I don't know why it says remember, because this is the first time it mentions this, AW32 fluid, which is what it comes with for operations above 40, and use Dextron ATF. You know, and automatic transmission fluid is hydraulic fluid, isn't it? But to use ATF for operation below 40. And this is dumb because this time of year where I live, it could be 25 one day, it could be 50 the next day, and then go back to 15 again the day after that. And you've got ATF in your car, you don't have to change your transmission fluid to a different type when the weather changes, do you? So I don't understand why the difference here, but I guess, to go along with the instructions, I'm going to have to go ahead and swap this out. Ugh. Okay, another thing to note, and this is in the instructions too, but they say when you use an extension cord, and you will use one because the one on the unit is maybe only 6 feet long, no more than 25 feet, and make sure it's a heavy duty. This one's a 12 gauge I use for my RV, so this is easily should handle 15 amps. But yeah, there's definitely a relationship between voltage and voltage drop and wire gauge and length and basically increase in current because of a voltage drop anyway. So yeah, you definitely don't want to run this unit with a skinny 100-foot cord because you'll burn up the motor. All right, you ain't gonna believe this. Well, you might. I've used this for about probably not even an hour of total running time. And check this out. Yeah, motor won't start. It's barely turning over, like it's seizing up or something like that. So before I returned this unit, I wanted to take a little closer look at it to see if I could figure out what went wrong with it. So I took the guard off the fan here so I can spin the motor by hand. And the symptoms of this thing burning slowly, it's not probably most likely not a start capacitor. A start capacitor goes bad, it just doesn't move at all, and this is actually moving. And sometimes motors will develop a dead spot for whatever reason, and if you rotate it a few degrees, power it up, it's fine. But again, that's not the same symptom because the motor is running. It spins freely too, so it's not seized bearing in there, and I seriously doubt the motor, the windings burned up in there as well. So one thing I did discover, however, is you hold the handle down to actuate the ram. Yeah, it works like it should. It's just that it won't run. The motor won't run without the handle being in place. So I have an educated guess on what's wrong here, and I say that because I do have somewhat of an education in hydraulics. And when I say that, I mean I know just enough to be dangerous. But the pump here is on the back of the motor, and that's always connected to the motor. It's not disengaging with the clutch or anything like that. That would be overly complicated. But this is most certainly a positive displacement pump as opposed to a centrifugal pump. A centrifugal pump, that would be like a sump pump, a utility pump, a pool filter pump, something like that, where you can have a zero discharge, close off your discharge line. That pump can continue to run, and the fluid inside of it just spins around inside the housing. But with a positive displacement pump, you can't do that. The fluid has to go somewhere. For example, like a bike pump, you put your thumb over the nozzle to fill your bike tire or whatever, and then you try to actuate it. You can't. It just stops. So what I'm thinking is, this motor runs. The pump is running, the fluid has to go somewhere, and if it's in neutral, like it is now, you don't have the lever best, that fluid is basically just has to be returned to the reservoir. So it probably goes up to the valve, and then just goes right back, dumps in the reservoir, and it just kind of circulates, while this is running. And then once you hit the lever, then it redirects the fluid to the cylinder, actuate the ram. When you let it go, it allows the fluid to go back to the reservoir, and then goes back to just a bypass mode where it just kind of recirculates until you hit the lever again. Somehow that circuit's not working. Whether it might be a blockage in like a return line, for example, or maybe the valve in here, maybe the spool's not returning to the right spot, so it's not allowing the bypass to work. So that's my theory on that. So I guess I'm going to send this back, and maybe I just got a dud. Probably I just got a dud. Maybe I'll get another one, and hopefully that works, because I really had high hopes for this because it fits my needs quite well. So I guess bottom line is, much of the time I get away with going cheap, but sometimes I don't.